But I see the Chargers as having a better offense this year, getting some offensive protection back, and Ladd returning to that kind of year one magic that he had.
Magic guy. He could have a blow up week where he catches an 80-yard touchdown. But he looks
Mm.
more like a track star than a wide receiver one, in my opinion.
Or be for good value because there's a lot of risk in my head of taking a Travis Hunter, and I'm not denying his athleticism. There's a reason he plays two ways in the NFL, but it's one coordinator decision of he's going to play majority defense, or it's one wide receiver signing. All right, welcome back to the desk, everybody.
Welcome, welcome.
But all the way from California and all the way from Virginia, we're going to talk about our breakout wide receiver candidates
That's right.
somewhere in between those two states. So,
Absolutely. The guys between the East and West Coast that we think are going to do well this year, these are mostly,
yeah.
I would say, second year players that we're talking about here. There might be some third year guys that we touch on.
Yeah, and then this isn't your captain obvious selections of, I think Jamar Chase is going to have a good year. We're talking guys who we think are tradable or guys you can obtain in a trade, guys you might be able to get, a little bit. It's still towards the upper part of a startup draft, but we're not talking about your first round selection here.
Yeah, exactly. We're thinking about guys that were maybe like between 5 and 13 points per game last year. So they weren't league winners, but at
Hmm.
their different price points, they showed promise and who we like best. So let's kick it
Yeah.
off with the guy that's kind of alone in his own value tier. Talk to me about Tet McMillan.
Clear wide receiver one. I mean, I think the dude drew like around 25% of the team targets last year. What, 70 catches, over 1,000 yards, 7 TDs, all in year one. So, I mean, the dude's a beast. Carolina Panthers are on their way up. He has the freaking build of Calvin Johnson. And so there's a lot to like about Tet McMillan.
And what are the guys in a startup draft that you're still taking maybe a couple spots ahead of Tet? Like if they're still on the board, you're not quite going there, but then it hits the point where Tet's the next best guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of like you mentioned, in his own category. I'm not quite a JSN yet or a Jamar Chase, but honestly, with his first year and how he performed, I wouldn't be shocked if come this time next year, if he puts up another one like this, then he is in that same category.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I think the two guys for me that sort of shake out at the end of the third round of startups, start of the fourth, are Lad
Mhm,
McConkey and Emeka Egbuka.
mhm. Okay.
So between those two, who is your preferred target? You know, if it was a 1-to-1 trade either way, who's your guy?
Well, I have Lad on my team, so
Okay,
I have to biasly go with him. Um,
sure.
I, you know, he I think last year got around 25% of the target share when he was like fully playing. But he catches everything that goes his way. His catch rate's like 70%. He's one of those guys though, you're relying on him to rack up a lot of volume because he doesn't score many touchdowns. He's a move the chains kind of guy. But I see the Chargers as having a better offense this year, getting some offensive protection back, and Ladd returning to that kind of year one magic that he had.
Okay.
But I know you're an Egbuka guy.
I am. So I would take the other side of that deal. I think with Evans gone, coming into year two, coming back from the injuries, that not so much I mean him a little bit, but just the entire Tampa offense had. I think it's a bounce back
Mm,
year. I could see him as a breakout. I think the slump at the end of last year for the last 6 or 7 games gives you a
Yeah.
potential buying window here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you
And
had
the start of last year, nice.
rookie pick 103 this year, would you keep that pick or would you trade it for like Ladd and Egbuka?
Well, that's hard to answer before you know where guys fall out. But I
Sure.
do think that if I was sitting and looking at my team and I'm like, I'm one solid receiver away or one solid player away,
Yep.
I'm comfortable getting an Ibuka or McConkey, who I do believe is going to give me consistent scoring with, high teen upside in any given week.
Yep.
If I'm somebody who I'm in a rebuilding year, then more likely to try to take a flyer with the 103 who could turn into the dude. The thing about Ibuka and especially McConkey, like they're not dudes, right?
Yeah,
McConkey
there's
isn't going
no
to go
Justin
moss somebody.
Jefferson level upside
Exactly.
there. I don't think either. I would
Exactly.
agree. I think you're hoping that they get up to like the Drake London range, which is not a bad
Yeah.
range.
No, no, not at all. And like I said, if you're a guy away or you just need a little more consistent scoring, I like either one of those guys.
Yep. Now there's some 3 guys from the 2024 wide receiver class
Mm.
that are, I would say, in the next group down. I don't see them very often going above Egbuka and Ladd in startups, but they're definitely still in that like late 4th, early 5th range. And that's
Mhm.
Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison, both juniors, and Rome Odunze.
Yeah, not
So
a junior.
of those 3, who is your guy?
Man, that's that's a tough question because on paper, right, Marvin Harrison, but he just hasn't done it yet.
Yep,
Brian Thomas last year, if I recall, somebody took him in the second round of our dynasty startup. I
like the
do think that
early
Jag,
second.
yeah, early second.
Yeah.
The thing about BTJ is he's the clear number one in Jacksonville. I mean, especially with, is Travis Hunter going to play wide receiver? Is he just going to play corner? Right. So I like that BTJ is a clear number one. My issue with the Dunze is they've got 4 guys who they could pass the ball to between Loveland, Adunze. They utilize their running backs out of the backfield. So I see the Bears having a little more of a spread to their offense, which makes me nervous about, picking Adunze as my top guy in that selection. I'd probably go to BTJ.
Okay. I'm right there with you. I think the situation in Jacksonville with Liam Cohen, with Trevor Lawrence is great, and I don't think it's as
Mhm.
crowded as Chicago's situation. So for those reasons, I think I would lean BTJ out of that top
Yeah.
group. Now let's say you had a clear contender this year. Are you taking the upside on BTJ, or do you want, let's say, a T. Higgins, who's sort of in that same price range?
Ooh. Oh. Uh, I honestly, I think I'd take a T, and I'll tell you why. Because he's been a couple years ago now, but T. Higgins, they're paying T. Higgins to be a wide receiver one. They just also happen to have arguably the best wide receiver one in football in the same squad.
Yep.
Bengals are coming off of a really horrible year, which means their schedule is going to be way easier this year. Burrow's coming off of injury, which, he might be coming off injury every year. But all that to say is when the Bengals light it up, that's probably the best offense in football. And they just have so much firepower on offense. And T. Higgins is a freaking stud and would be a wide receiver one on pretty much any other offense in the NFL. My fear with BTJ in Jacksonville is their schedule's harder next year. It's year 2 with Liam Cohen and the Trevor Lawrence system. We've talked about this, and I've talked about this in previous videos. You kind of see D coordinators start to figure some guys out in the second year of a system. So if I was a contender this year, I'd take T. Higgins.
Okay. I don't hate it. I mean, I have those BTJ and T. Higgins are sort of back to back in the rankings for me. Any kind of rebuilder, I'm leaning BTJ, but and I
Mhm.
could see it. If you're a contender and you want to hold the upside, feel free, right? If you're contending because you just
Yeah,
have a shed load of value, go for it.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't hate the lateral move there either. There's one other guy in this value range who we've already talked about as a bit of a sell, and that's Luther Burden. But I'll ask you,
Hmm.
if you had to pick between Rome and Burden, which Bear is your preferred wide receiver one?
Adunze. I think he
Okay.
takes more of the target share. And I think he's less reliant on the gadget play to get his touches.
Yep,
I take Adunze.
I agree. Couple of
So,
year 2 and year 3 receivers as well that you can get cheaper.
mhm,
Let's talk about maybe the priciest one, and that's still Travis Hunter. So I had him ranked coming into the offseason,
uh-huh,
right there with Marvin Harrison Jr., Luther Burden, but sort of at the bottom of that range, maybe closer to like Devonta Smith, where
mhm.
he was one of the last young upside guys that I felt like he really could be the best wide receiver in his own offense and have a huge breakout. With everything that happened with Jacoby Myers, with the coordinator saying he's probably going to play a lot of defense, I think he has fallen now appropriately into like the 8th or ninth round of startups.
Mhm.
But I do think he is the only one of the guys left that we're talking about that has any real chance of being a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. So I don't hate the dart throw.
I don't either, but I gotta tell you, it better be for good value because I just there's a lot of risk in my head of taking a Travis Hunter, and I'm not denying his athleticism. There's a reason he plays two ways in the NFL, but it's one coordinator decision of he's gonna play majority defense, or it's one wide receiver sign from Jacksonville. That's a solid replacement of a Hunter on the offensive side of the ball. It pretty much takes him out of that offense. So I think he has a ton of talent, but man, there's a lot of people you can take in the 8th round of a draft that are still just fine, solid players. I don't know. I don't know. I guess it depends on if you're already kind of rebuilding and you want to see if you can hit a flyer. I like the pick. I think if you're in more of a position of you're looking to make a run at it, I wouldn't take Hunter. That's just me.
It's true. I mean, if you are a contender, I don't think Hunter this year is the guy for you. You know, is there a guy who's doing a 1-year reload right now who has the Devonte
Mhm.
Adams? Is there a guy
Right.
that's low on Minnesota because of what happened last year and you can get Addison? If you're
Mhm.
ready to contend, Hunter's probably not the guy. But I think it's probably a reasonable dart throw
Yeah.
on the rebuilding rosters.
Yeah. Yeah. Couple other guys in this area. What Jaden Higgins, Xavier Worthy, Matt Golden. What are your thoughts on
Yep.
any of those guys?
Those guys are all going sort of 10th, 11th round range. And
Hmm.
similar to Hunter, there's a lot of veterans that I generally prefer. So if you can get a Mike Evans here and you're contending, just go for it. Michael Pittman, that kind of stuff. I'm all about that. But if I had to pick one of the three, I think Jaden Higgins has got the best shot in my
Okay.
mind. Um,
Okay.
that's just looking at who else is there in Houston. I think the target volume isn't super high, but it's him and Nico misses
Hmm.
time. I watched him get
Every year.
open. I watched him catch passes. He did a little bit better in the second half of the season. So, you know, and it's not so much I'm going out and buying Jaden Higgins everywhere I can take, as much as I had some teams with Xavier Worthy. I watched some Matt Golden, and I'm not all that convinced that either of them have it. But if I had to pick, in order, it would be Higgins and then Worthy and then Golden for me. What are your
Does
thoughts
Rasheed
on it?
Wright being out for Kansas City affect Worthy at all, or your idea of
Well,
Worthy?
he was out for the whole first part last season, and Worthy was useless during that time
That's true.
period too. Now, granted, he broke his collarbone on the third play of the season and sort of came back
Hey, shout out
slow.
Travis Kelsey.
Yeah, got him. Um,
Yeah.
but e- I just don't know. I
Eh,
mean, if it's not going to happen when you're the lone wide receiver in Pat Mahomes' offense and you're getting outproduced by like Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster and Tyquan Thornton, you think the Chiefs are going to get somebody. What if the Chiefs get Carnell Tate or Kenyon Sadiq, and then Rasheed comes back after another 6 or 8 games? I think he's just at that point like a gadget guy. He could have a blow up week where he catches an 80-yard touchdown, but he looks
mm.
more like a track star than a wide receiver one, in my opinion.
No, I fully agree with that. And I think the Chiefs now are in a very difficult division, much tougher situation. Their offense didn't perform last year to what, people were expecting. Let's be honest, the year before that didn't perform as well either. So I agree with Worthy. Golden's interesting just because, like you, I think, we watched him last year. Underwhelming considering where Green Bay took him in the draft and how they tried to use him. I'm interested to see his year two, but if I had to take one of those three guys, Higgins is the safest bet right now.
Yep. I mean, yeah, the main issue with me with Golden is that Watson spent like half the year injured,
Hmm.
and Golden caught one more pass than Travis Hunter did, and Travis Hunter played in like 6 games while
Yeah,
playing defense. So it's just
right.
hard to see the usage there. He could pop out, and I could be totally wrong with the take, but that's sort of where I'm at with him.
Okay. So before we wrap this up, other than Tet, is there one guy who you really think is going to boom this year?
From this list, I am pretty confident in both Ladd and Egbuka being low end wide receiver one, high end wide receiver two guys. That would be my take. I think it gets pretty shaky after that in terms of the BTJ, MHJ, Rome group. In that range in startup drafts, I've
Mhm.
typically been leaning running back. Now, if any of those
Yeah,
guys fall to like the late fifth, early sixth round, give them to me.
right.
Totally fine. But I would prefer to have like a Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Quinshon Judkins in that range with BTJ and MHJ, and just take my wide receivers a little bit earlier and feel good about it.
All right. Well, as always, from the desk, thank you very much.
Absolutely. See you next time.
Sounds good.